See, we became doctors or engineers or actors or whatever professionals later, but we were first born as humans. We were born into humanity. And as human beings, we are first required to uphold features or values which bring recognition to us as human beings. I mean, then only can you talk of being doctor or engineer or whatever profession. And if you lose sight of these very fundamental things, you may well be a very skilled surgeon, a very skilled physician, or very skilled professional of any other kind. You will be nothing but a tool to be used by those who want to wield the society's resources for their petty and mean ends. That's all at the cost of the people.
In this episode of Baobab, Redwood and Neem, we talk to Dr. Vikas Bajpai of the Center for Social Medicine and Community Health, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Trained as a radiation oncologist, what makes this doctor different from many others is his commitment to study the living conditions of the vast majority of people that need medical attention in India, and his decades of work to change these conditions by direct participation in people's struggles. He recently co authored 2 books with his fellow doctor and friend, Dr. Anup Saraya, a gastroenterologist at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. Dr. Saraya, too, is a doctor whose purview extends beyond providing medical care to his patients. He takes an active interest in changing the living conditions of the marginalized in the society. Dr. Bajpai and Dr. Saraya's books are entitled Health Beyond Medicine, Some Reflections on the Politics and Sociology of Health in India, and Food Security in India, Myth and Reality. We had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Vikas Bajpai. I'm very happy that you are on our show today. Thank you for joining us from New Delhi, India.
Thanks to you as well. Thank you.
As a doctor, you feel that patients need more than medicine, that health is possible only if we go beyond medicine.
So when you talk of health, everyone often starts imagining hospitals and doctors and medical care, and those kind of picture conjures up in the mind. But we lose sight of the fact that all of this comes into play only when we are not well, we are diseased. So then the role of hospitals and doctors and nurses and equipment and all those things come in. But what keeps us in good health? See, the most fundamental things about that is you should have good food to eat primarily. Okay. You should have clothes to protect you from your environment, a housing, a roof over your head in which you can be securely placed with your family members. Your social, political, economic environment should facilitate your being healthy. Okay. So imagination of health, which begins with actually a diseased condition, is a totally flawed conceptualization. But unfortunately, this conceptualization has been time and again reinforced by the forces which are dominant in today's system and all, and they stand to gain by this kind of perception of or conceptualization of health, rather than emphasizing all those primary inputs which go into making a healthy person.
You're saying that there's a section of people that may actually benefit from that status quo. What is that section?
That section is, say, the health industry, the way it has evolved, which is not interested really in what medicine, medical technologies, advancement in science, how it can improve the lot of the people at large. Their interest is entirely that we have made certain investment into it and we must get good returns from that investment. If a person is normally healthy, if you and I get the conditions to live in where which will promote our health, certainly our hospital visits will become much more less. And if hospital visits become much more less, then the consumption of all these technologies which are on the offer now, if it will not be there, then there will be no profits. If there will be no profits for these people, then that will not add up to the GDP. It will not show in the GDP. And nothing could be more kind of crestfallen for our rulers than if the GDP rates are going down. A person of TB who is easily cured by ensuring that primary mode of treatment or primary drugs are made available nearest to his house or even at his house. If such a poor person suffering from TB is easily cured of his disease, that does not generate revenues. And if it does not generate revenues, it doesn't show in the ledger. If it doesn't show in the ledger, it doesn't add up to the GDP. So what is the use of having such a TB patient? Even a TB patient, for this section of the society who view health as an industry and as a revenue generation, source of revenue generation, for them, a person of TB is of any worth only if he or she can visit a hospital on whom they can perform a battery of tests, which again, whether required or not required. So this whole logic itself is entirely flawed. And it pushes the development of medicine also in an entirely different direction, which may be profitable for a few. But taken, if we take society at large, then it is very harmful. It is not cost effective. It pushes people into poverty.
Having a good healthcare system where diseases are actually prevented by way of social and economic intervention by the government has worked in any country. Do you have any examples?
China, when it entered into UN, it brought with it a whole lot of experience of public health, which they had tried out in their country without the aid of very costly technologies, of big hospitals and very well-trained, specialized and super specialized physicians. They brought with them the experience of how they were able to root out so many of the diseases and so much of ill health in the rural areas simply by this concept of barefoot doctors, and by mobilizing common people to tackle the conditions which were causing, or the non-medical conditions which were leading to ill health in the society at large. For example, schistosomiasis. Now, that is a disease which is where the carrier of the pathogen are the snails. And schistosomiasis was so rampant in China that it probably had the highest morbidity and mortality rates. Okay, it was something like what was malaria to India. What they did, for example, they mobilized entire villages where, the entire village, all old, young, and children and youth, they will come out, they will dig ditches, put these snails into those ditches and cover it up. And they got rid of such a humongous problem. Whereas you see our country, we relied on just technological interventions. To begin with, it was DDT, and then came other insecticides and anti-malarials and all. But the result is that till date, we continue to suffer from epidemics of malaria, which until a few years back were getting reported as and when they happened in different parts of the country, may it be in Assam or may it be in Rajasthan and all. But then, given the overall environment, social political environment now we have in this country, even reportage of all these kind of things has really stopped. And frankly speaking, to get rid of most of the common public health problems, you don't need very well trained and highly trained doctors. Even paramedics who are trained well enough and are dedicated, and a population which is mobilized, which sees government's interventions and programs as which sees a measure of sincerity in those programs on part of the government to reach out to the people, to improve the lot of the people. Now, if we can have that kind of a situation, much of ill health would become part of history.
Dr. Bajpayee, I'm sure that you will not be very popular amongst the medical practitioners who are earning big bucks. What has been the reaction to your thinking from your peers?
Well, as you pointed out, quite frankly, I am a misfit there. I'm a misfit. And all people like me, they are misfits over there. See, unfortunately, the change which has come about now, say in my generation when I was training as a doctor, there was a societal perception that a doctor is meant to serve. That was the conception in the minds of the people, and even to an extent, to a good extent, even in the minds of the doctors themselves or the medical professionals themselves. Now today, that perception stands on its head. Neither the people expect they would want doctors to serve, but they know increasingly that medicine has, or medical care has to be purchased. Okay. And the doctors on their part, well, if we were to go by what is happening in these corporate hospitals, the private hospitals, which have come up in a big way, all with the help and aid of public subsidies, then the state of affairs doesn't speak really very well of them. It is a sad story as to what has happened to medical profession. Now, if you were to go to any elite medical college in India today, the most elite of them are still in public sector. But if you were to go to them, say if you were to come to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, a medical graduate, their thinking is absolutely clear. They know that after they have cleared the first professional examination, they would like to take ECFMG Part 1, which is the qualifying exam for migrating to US and practicing medicine over there. Then once they clear their final professional, they have to take ECFMG Part 2. And after internship, it's something like, their body and soul happily united in the US. So they migrate there. Whereas they have all gained from the subsidies provided by the people of India for their training. And this happens without any qualms of conscience. It is sought to be justified in the name of people's democratic right. How can anyone force them not to go there? But the question is, we must weigh this democratic right, quote unquote democratic right, against the democratic right of poor Indians to be treated by doctors trained in the country from their own resources. What about their democratic right? And I'm quite sure if any doctor who still chooses to practice in India or be a government, they would be well paid. It's not that remaining in India poses a existential kind of issues for them of any kind. But then, doctors alone are not to be blamed in as much as they are following the trends which have become dominant in the society and which are being promoted at large by those who rule.
The doctors who are trained in India, do they mostly go for private hospital jobs or government hospital jobs if they remain in India?
When we were students, we would look up to our professor with awe. And we would also wish that only if I could somehow be a faculty in my medical college. What a privileged position to be. But today, I'm not quite sure, let alone the student. Even professor's ideal or role model would be a person or a doctor working in consultant in Apollo or Max or any one of these corporate hospitals. So as far as government recruitment is concerned, the government itself does not want to recruit.
Why is that in a country like India where the health requirements are so high given the population and the diseases?
I'll just give you one example.
Sure.
Now, our government has opened these AIMS, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, now in very many states. There is one AIMS in each state. At least that is what is targeted.
Okay.
So you have AIMS operating in Patna, in Jodhpur, in Raipur, in Bhopal,
Okay.
and likewise many places. Recently, they held interviews for faculty positions in these AIMS. There is virtually in many of the departments, there's hardly any faculty over there. Though these institutes, they are taking admissions of students for undergraduate courses now. Okay, but there is no faculty to teach as yet. They held an interview, walk-in interview for faculty recruitment, in which all positions were on contract. If you're really interested in luring doctors into those faculty positions, you should have at least offered them a permanent position. And you keep the positions on contract basis. Now, which specialized doctor would like to come over and join as a faculty when everyone at least hopes, if not quite succeed in making good money, but everyone at least hope that they can better deploy their skills in private sector and earn a lot more.
So do you mean that it is not just an attack on hospitals in terms of having good doctors, but also on medical colleges? Because this would mean that we have more private colleges.
Yes, the whole attempt is to decimate the public sector. It is to finish it off. Though we cannot expect our rulers to ever acknowledge it as such. But then they do it in such a way, they will say, well, we held interviews for recruitment, in faculty recruitment. If no one is coming, it is not our problem. You see, that is the sorry state of affairs. And they can, and if pushed too hard, they can all put it on the doctors. Oh well, they are not interested in serving the people and all those kind of things. They go after money and all. You can put you very well use all this argument. Okay, but what will be hidden from the people at large is that the government itself created so many hurdles in actually wanting to recruit proper faculty.
What are the suggestions you have made in your book to solve the issues that we are grappling with?
First of all, there are no quick fixes. A health system does not evolve in separation from the society. It evolves, it is cast in the same mold in which the society at large is cast. Government should stand guarantee for providing free medical education to the people. There is nothing free actually. It is all tax funded. So government should take the responsibility rather than shoving the responsibility onto the shoulders of the private sectors. Okay, government should stand guarantee for making entire public health infrastructure which is available, making it functional by the very many ways of in which you recruit health manpower, you train health manpower and all that. All these things are there. Okay, But these will succeed, likely succeed, only when there is a push by the people at large and the forces which conceptualize society, which have a different conceptualization of the society. When all these forces, they lead the people towards a radical socio-economic change in the society. We may well keep thinking, oh, that's going to take such a long time and all that. But let me tell you, all the countries which have succeeded in providing basic healthcare services or even advanced healthcare services to the people in any meaningful way, there these changes have been wrought by such kind of a socio-political thrust. In the capitalist countries, developed countries of the West, it has taken a huge kind of political mobilization for the birth of a welfare state as well.
So, can you give us an example of a Western capitalist society where the health of people has improved because of the changes?
For example, I'll just give you one example. I happened to see this beautiful documentary by Ken Loach, which is the spirit of 45. And I would recommend it for all your viewers also. They must see it. Now, NHS in Britain, it was not just NHS. There were a whole lot of social sector initiatives which were taken in 1945 as a result of a huge political upheaval. Mind you, in 1945, Winston Churchill lost the election in spite of having been victorious in the war. So what had changed in 1945? What had changed in 1945 was that Soviet Union, the then only socialist state, it had emerged as a major superpower. It was the first workers' state where all these social measures, a socialized medicine, it was first implemented. That was one country which had guaranteed certain benefits to the people as a matter of right. In the Britain of 1930s, what was the condition of the workers in Britain? They were poverty stricken. There were superstitions as of this kind. For treatment of certain disease, you place socks on the nose of the person, or the sick person. Not because people really wanted, but then when they could not afford the health services, you take some recourse or the other. So
For
these
example,
superstitions.
we hear so many of such stories coming out of India. Like for snake
Oh yes,
bites and
when
for
fortunately, unfortunately, the prime minister of the country and so many other leaders of his ilk, they say that we had test tube baby and we had transplant surgery and all, without a whimper of a protest from medical fraternity to making such a joke of their science. But when the situation is such, well, you can't really blame the common people for superstitions. But what I'm telling you, in Britain, what happened? They had set up beverages committee and all, which made these recommendations for housing, for full employment, for healthcare, for education, and all that which went into making of a welfare state that we know of today. It is another thing that that welfare state is again entered a demolition project over there. But it resulted, even in these countries, it resulted from a massive political mobilization of the working class to demand these things.
there are also moves, as you just also referred to, in your answer, to dismantle some of these already established welfare states, in the capitalist world. And I wonder how, given that situation, we can hope for a welfare state in a country like India.
As far as I am concerned, if hope dies, life isn't worth living, actually. See, so hope is a very big thing, especially if you are interested in bringing about this kind of a positive change in the society. And hope emanates not from the upper echelons, not from those who are in power, not from those who are the haves of the society. My hope emanates from the have-nots of the society. Because howsoever depressing may be the present situation, but then we should not just look at present. We should see it present in the light of the past. And there are, in every epoch of history, whenever the times have been the darkest, it is the have-nots who have risen up to bring about and totally alter the situation, the world situation, or situation of their societies at different points in time. So those kind of movement, those kind of struggles, they are living. They are ongoing still, not just in India, across the world. And in India also, in large numbers, people do come out and participate in those kind of processes. It is another thing how much of publicity is given to them or accorded to them by the dominant media or not.
How long did it take you to come to the conclusions you have come to?
After my MD in radiation oncology, I left medicine and to be part of revolutionary trade movement in India. And that afforded me an opportunity to come very close to the actual situation of working Indians. And I'm not talking of far-flung areas. I'm talking of city like Delhi. It's industrial areas. If you go and see the condition of the workers over there, I mean, it certainly doesn't behove of a country which aspires to be counted as a world power of any kind. And I've had very good friends and comrades who have helped shape my ideas and all, and grow my convictions deeper. So it is not medicine per se which has contributed to my orientation than the people themselves. Than the people themselves.
And your co-author has been practicing medicine for a very long time.
Oh yes, my co-author has been practicing medicine for a very long time. He is a senior consultant at All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences here in
But
Delhi.
even he has the same views. So I guess, when you interact with people, whether as a doctor or as an activist or as a social worker, you learn what their needs are and what is causing the illnesses in society.
Sure. Because if you really are practicing your own profession, if you really are a doctor, then you are bound to ask for social history of the patient, their environmental history and all. There are links. It's not just that medicine is only a biomedical phenomenon. It is a social phenomenon as much.
How you define an ideal doctor?
I do have an imagination of an ideal doctor, but it's not always very easy to put it crisply in words. See, an ideal doctor is one who is a humanist to begin with. He has good knowledge of people's medical conditions in relation with their socio-economic and political conditions, and is equipped with skills and the spirit to employ his skills, his medical technology in the actual living conditions of the people, along with the desire to further refine his skills in accordance with the needs of the people.
That would mean that the doctors, the ideal doctors, should actually be playing a very active role in the policies that the government makes of their country. So, and also take interest in the political happenings, because otherwise they would not really be able to function as ideal doctors.
If I were to just put it in totally utilitarian terms as well, that if they are really interested in the interest of their profession or their interest as a professional, they ought to be doing what you have suggested that they should be doing. Because if they cannot, then sooner or later, the repercussions of this would be so sharp and severe that they would be very hard pressed to even function as medical professionals.
How do you connect the present political situation with the health services or the general health of the country?
And so far as the present situation is concerned, let me tell you about one. People should know one thing, that today the differences in terms of in political terms between different actors of the ruling classes, they are more in the nature of their individual or personality centric and all that. In terms of policies, there is a policy consensus across the spectrum. Across the spectrum. I'm talking of the left arm of the ruling classes to the far right arm of the ruling classes. There is a policy consensus on what needs to be done about medicine, what needs to be done about education, what needs to be done about food security and all. See, all of them, whatever they may say, when they are in opposition, depending on their political convenience, they may raise certain slogans, say certain, give certain statements and all, okay, or maybe have an occasional program or protest against the government policy and all. But wherever these parties, I'm again saying from the left to the far right, wherever they have been in government, they have implemented more or less same kind of policies, which has encouraged and the role of the markets and intervention of the markets in the provisioning of very basic services of health, education, food. The present government we can say it is on the 100th step. But in terms of implementing anti-people policies. But let me tell you, this has been possible only when the previous governments have covered the first climbed the first 99 steps. Okay, so it is in continuation. So this is what has what has become of our country's politics. Where are the issues in mainstream politics? Insofar as mainstream politics is concerned, where are the issues of the people? Who is talking about health? Who is talking about food security? Who is talking about employment? Nobody.
But as a doctor, yeah.
Yeah.
As a doctor, you feel that it is important for you to talk about these issues.
Yes.
As a doctor, you feel that
otherwise, what will remain your relevance in the society if you don't talk about these issues, if you don't intervene in these issues? At least as I see myself as a doctor, see, we became doctors or engineers or actors or whatever professionals later, but we were first born as humans. We were born into humanity, at least, and as human beings, we are first required to uphold features or values which bring recognition to us as human beings. Then only can you talk of being doctor or engineer or whatever profession. And if you lose sight of these very fundamental things, you may well be a very skilled surgeon, a very skilled physician, or very, very skilled professional of any other kind. You will be nothing but a tool to be used by those who want to wield the society's resources for their petty and mean ends. That's all at the cost of the people. If these individuals had this opportunity to kind of pull back and have a view at themselves, as to what has become of them. But the fact is that such sensibilities and such capabilities are the first things to be destroyed when you want to render doctors into the kind of image that you just talked of.
So I think that one of the things that I can see, a relationship I can see, is that the more distant you make the future medical professional from the society, the more inhuman perhaps he or she will become. So if the future doctors are not even trained in government hospitals where they will see the common folk coming in, they will probably not realize what their duty is.
See, you could be trained in a government hospital also. But the point is, then you see people, as I said, you see people shorn of their socio-economic, political backgrounds, where they come from, what they suffer from, what their trials and travails are. You see people shorn of all of this. Then you see not people, you see only bodies which are ill, severely ill, moderately ill, and the bodies on which you want to practice your skills, on by using which you want to become skilled, skilled again to make more money. That is what fashion actually gets reduced to.
Now, I also, want to tell our viewers that you have written another book which is on food security, and I will quote something from it. It says that food security is the most essential requirement of life. Ensuring food security for its members is the most compelling engagement of the head of a household. It is also a vital public policy issue for a developing country. What constitutes food security for a nation has undergone conceptual change over a period of time, from just availability of sufficient food for its people to provision of access to and basic services for absorption of food, and includes nutritional and health security. Can you explain this a little bit? Because a lot of the times when we talk of food security, we are just talking in terms of having enough food. So what is the difference between having enough food and having basic services for absorption of food and including nutritional and health security?
See, you have food, but when you consume food, that it should serve, that consumed food should be able to serve its biological function. There are certain necessary conditions for that it should be absorbed well, and it should be used and metabolized by the body to build the body tissues, to build body's immunity and ability to fight against the diseases. Okay, but suppose a person who is malnourished, even if you give him or her enough food to eat, a malnourished person who's infested with, say, some worms in his or her intestines, or is having some kind of a infectious disease, running temperature. Now that food which you have given, it will first of all not be properly absorbed. Whatever portion of it will get absorbed, it will be metabolized in a manner that will be wasteful for the body, because it will not be utilized for building body tissues and body's ability to fight diseases and all those kind of things. Okay. So even though the food is available, but it is going down the drain. I mean, it's like, you're making food available, keep making food available, but it's like mopping a floor while leaving the tap open. Okay, so you you can be busy providing food, and you can be busy mopping the floor, but in the end result, you will end up where you began from. Now the thing is, these are not just technical challenges. First of all, making the food available itself, in my view, it entails nothing short of intervening in socio-politically in the structure of the society itself, especially for countries like India. I mean, when you have people who suffer from hunger in the richest country of the world, and there are as many as 40 million people in US who suffer from hunger. If this is the situation in the richest country of the world, which is also the largest exporter of food, in a country like India, you see, non-availability of food, enough food, is not a logistical issue. It is not just an issue of production itself. It's an issue of the manner in which production happens. It's an issue of who controls the productive resources. Whom did they produce for? Okay. So, and it relates to who commands the distribution of this food. Likewise, if a person is sick, it's not just a question of making drugs available to him or her to cure her of her illness. You cure her of her illness, she will again fall sick the next day, next week, because you have not cured the conditions which are leading to this illness repeatedly. Now, I mean, just give you one example. I did my PhD field work in district Sita of northern Indian state Uttar Pradesh. And in my two study villages, the better performing village, there the mean BMI, body mass index, that is the body weight divided by square of height in meters. Body mass index was 14.12 in the better village, and in the worse off village it was 12.97. Now, less than 15 is not compatible with life really. But these are people, they are living like that. They move around, do their work, whatever. But then there is hardly any subcutaneous fat over their bones. And mind you, they are still not counted as hungry. They know.
And it's the
get shown in
it's the
hunger reports.
Yeah. It's the same with women, because your book also talks about gender discrimination, the intra-family food security. So a family may not fall under, because they may be making enough according to the government data, but then the women within the family may not be getting enough.
They are worse off. They are worse off, and mind you, when given the kind of relations, societal relations which are figured or configured around the relations of production in the society, all kinds of retrogressive tendencies get further strengthened. May it be the disadvantages of caste, may it be the disadvantages of gender. Okay, it is apart from class, apart class disabilities. The disabilities owing to caste structure, owing to gender, they get further strengthened by the kind of economic structure that has been developed in our country. And rather they get strengthened consciously, because those who put their stakes on deriving maximum profits, they find these gender discrimination, caste discrimination, very handy tools for extracting surplus, for pushing down the value of people's labor, giving them as little as possible. Caste facilitates it. Gender facilitates it very easily,
Do the poor in India have access to mental health practitioners?
The access is next to nothing. It is if you talk of the vast rural areas, you talk of Mofussil towns, you talk of even middle-level cities and all that. It is that access is nowhere exists. You will have a psychiatrist only in medical college hospitals or big tertiary care. Even district hospitals, they don't have a psychiatrist most of the time. And mind you, that is because the number of psychiatrists themselves are very few.
But tell me one thing, does that mean that perhaps the regular doctors, the general practitioners, should be trained more in addressing people's psychological issues? So for instance, if a woman comes to the doctor and says, I have a problem, and it could, the doctor could treat her obviously with medicine to an extent, but supposingly she's a battered woman at home and needs help in that sense, she needs to stand up or have more self-confidence. The doctor's doing nothing to help her in that regard, so she will again get sick or beaten up or whatever.
I'll put it in this way, without encroaching on the domain of the psychiatrist per se. But say, for example, what is the biggest mental health problem across the world? Biggest mental health problem across the world is depression. And it happens in degrees. People suffer from it in degrees. Now, the commonest causes of depression, they are related to your life. Okay, your environment around you. So what I'm saying is essentially what I said earlier, that you make a doctor aware of this fundamental linkage between health and a person's societal conditions. If they are aware of this reality, they are mindful of this reality at all points in time, then only will they be sensitive or will they be alert enough to pick up these jarring notes when they are seeing their patient that yes, perhaps he or she could be suffering from this problem as well.
So, we have talked a lot about the relationship of the medical practitioners with the society that they are treating. Now, I want to ask you about the relationship of the medical practitioners or medical professionals with the more powerful. So, most of the times, doctors have a certain influencing capacity in the society. How do you think they should use that to change the state of affairs in their country?
See, I'm very clear on this. A doctor is obliged to fight on the side of the people, not as a follower, but to lead them, to be the guardian of their rights, okay, to be the guardian of their needs. Because a medical professional, see, medicine was, before it was uprooted from its moorings in social justice, medicine was rooted in the concept of care. Medical profession evolved in a manner where a doctor traditionally used to be viewed as someone who would protect people's rights, who would protect people from harmful influences. It is only with the rise of capitalism and entrepreneurial medicine, and which that by and by the profession of medicine was uprooted from its socio-economic moorings and it was put in a marketplace, especially under the kind of neoliberal economics that we are suffering from. It is this which has uprooted the medical profession and disoriented it entirely. But then, if we were to make it social, a profession, after all, has to serve certain social need. Now, the needs are of two kinds. In the way when it is placed in the marketplace, the need is that of the capitalist, not even of the doctor, frankly speaking. Need is that of the capitalist to make profit, maximize profits, usurious profit, vampirish profits. Doctor becomes a tool towards serving that end. But when medical profession is placed within the society in its proper perspective, then doctor just does not remain a tool. Doctor ought to be a leader of the people, and especially of the most vulnerable section of the society. He ought to be the protector of. That is how I see the role of a doctor.
So, how can he do it? Should he be demanding things from the government?
It's not a matter of just demanding things from the government. First of all, he should wherever he or she is placed, she should see to it that she does not become a tool for the oppressors. If she is working in a medical college, in a hospital setting and all that, and government proposes to impose certain policies which will harm the interest of the patient, say be the imposition of user charges, a doctor should fight against it, should raise her voice in a manner that, look here, you are imposing this, thinking that it will lead to this benefit, cross subsidization and all those kinds of things. But a doctor, she is very well placed to marshal all the evidence from various studies and say, look here, whatever may be your motive, whatever may be your orientation, but this is not borne out by the evidence. It should not be implemented. She should stand up and speak about it.
You were listening to Baobab, Redwood and Neem. In this episode, Dr. Vikas Bajpai discussed why it is important for medical professionals to be involved in social justice movements. Baobab, Redwood and Neem is an interview series by Peace Vigil that inspires hope and the will to act on it. We are all capable of working for peace We are all needed. Peace needs each one of us. Theme song Baobab Redwood and Neem is sung by Shireen. Music is by Shireen, Jeremy Karodia and Sameer Dosani. Editing by Sameer Dosani. And once again, this is a Peace Vigil production, October 2018.